Hello everyone and welcome to your horoscope for the week of April the 3rd till 9, 2023. Now this is going to be quite an interesting week because there is a lot of intensity in the sky. Certain energies that have very recently shifted into their present expression are getting very strong out there. And also, this is a week when certain people out there celebrate Easter. So I would like to wish a very happy Easter to those people who celebrated on the 9th. And Easter is very much sacrifice themed. And this is where this Easter is going to be quite memorable because the whole karmic imprint of the sky speaks about the sacrifice and the remembrance of any sacrifice, religious themed or not, because Saturn is conjuncting a fixed star, the star of Saint Gabriel, Archangel Gabriel, Fomalhaut, the star of magic and alchemy and the expression of the divine mystery. And Saturn is the element of sacrifice. Pisces is the energy of the martyr, so sacred sacrifice. And Saturn is also time, and that can very well translate to a sacrifice being provided in a very longevity way, if that even makes sense. So this is definitely going to be highlighted in our lives and the world out there. Who are those people who offer a long-term sacrifice, sacrificing their time, sacrificing their energy, providing something for those who are in need? But of course, this is where the theme of the sacrifice is highlighted, but this can play out in so very many ways because it is this week when the universe does teach all of us a lesson about the value, the worth of sacrifice. So, for example, all of us may be recipients of the sacrifice of others, and if this is continuous, sometimes we just become, how should I say, very ignorant to the sanctity of this. For example, the way see this play out in the smallest ways in life, like I have an acquaintance who is, you know, in his 30s, but he is vulnerable. And his dad, his elderly father, comes and helps him, cooks for him, cares for him, nurtures him as best as he can every single day or very often. And this is quite a sacred sacrifice, is it not? Because we can see the opposite of this that became normal. And in the world where the opposite of this is normal, the gesture of that father is quite, impressive. And not just for us in a human way, it is the most impressive in a divine way, I can assure everyone this. So you can imagine that probably this week in the life of that person, in the life of the father, in the life of a son, the value of the sacrifice, one way or another, is going to be highlighted. And sometimes it is highlighted by the giver of the service, giver by the service. Well, the opposite sign of Pisces is Virgo, the service giver. Well, anyway, so the service giver might be disabled. Saturn, the force of limitation, the force of constriction, the great malefic, so to speak. It can take away the sacrifice for a small moment, making the sacrifice recipient appreciate the continuity of this that much more. And also, Saturn in the sign of Pisces, well, regardless of the degree, regardless of its conjunctions, morally, spiritually, ethically. It is all about gratitude and appreciation. Saturn, you know, in the sign of Pisces, the being dissolved. being able to not usually be its classic self, if that even makes sense, can actually represent its true malefic side here. So it tends to, and of course, understand this alchemically, not in a real way, but punish. Why? Because read medieval alchemy and you will understand why. That was also a valid way Saturn was perceived by spiritualists of that time, because Saturn, especially in Pisces, does mirror our own inner Saturn, or the lack of our inner Saturn, so to speak. So that's why sometimes in the lives of some people, some beings, it can become very, very cruel. But when it is cruel, it just mirrors, it just mimics, it just resonates with their own lack of gratitude, their inability to feel deep gratitude. So this energy matures spiritually. So sometimes in the lives of those who are very vulnerable, this Saturn can make them even more vulnerable. But for others, those who live in deep, deep appreciation and gratitude, this Saturn can, especially that this week also, it holds a trine with Mars and it holds sextiles with other power players. So it can be quite soothing. This is where it can reflect the person's own sacrifice back at them with deep, deep appreciation. If the person is grateful, then the universe will mirror a gratitude deeper and greater than theirs. This is how kind of Pisces works. So this Saturn conjunct Fomalhaut is definitely going to make us feel what sacrifice is, and kind of invite us in a forceful way to feel appreciation for this. And what do I mean forceful way? How can Pisces be forced? There are those moments in life when even atheists do turn to prayer, because it's that heavy or that Piscean. That is this energy when we do turn to prayer, either because a miracle has happened in our lives and we just cannot believe how the impossible hard became easy, peasy, in a flash of an eye, or, as a gesture of divine intervention. While for others, this is where that which they always had for granted is gone now. And how is life without that? And, this is where this energy might trigger the victims, because Pisces is the victim. Pisces is the, you know, vulnerable person who does embody something with their vulnerability. But there is the energy where sometimes, especially, and this is where it's not the person, it is our society, it is the spirituality, the mainstream spirituality of our society, and the way we raise or educate our young, because everything we do say is that being a victim, being vulnerable, something bad that happened to you, kind of entitles you to very, very many things. Now, Saturn will punish this. And I cannot help but use the word punish because we can understand astrology in a much more modern Jungian way where nothing is personal, but we can also understand astrology in the old classic way. But how outdated is the classic? Because the classic is based that the universe does reflect our own inner configuration. And if we are emotional, why cannot the universe be emotional? Certain schools of mysticism, of thought, of philosophy do ridicule that the universe has emotion and is emotional. Yet, ancient astrology, every deity out there, every planet out there, the symbolism of it is a divine emotion and not thought, not logic, not Uranus, but rather Venus or rather Neptune. So, this is where both of these ways of understanding the divine are perfectly valid at the same time because we just entered a much more clear expression of the age of Aquarius because Pluto is at the point of the Great Conjunction. Pluto is making us feel this very, very deeply and not just feel it, it is in our thoughts, it is in our mental sphere. We understand it, like it or not, it is within our mind. For some people, like a plague, for other people, as a truth they cannot ignore. Because this Pluto is inviting us to do feel through the reminiscence of the age of the internet, but it's birth reminiscence. Because what we saw at its birth, what we felt at its birth, was the good and bad. Because when something comes into existence, it immediately casts a shadow, right? It has its myriad of usefulnesses, but it starts casting its shadow. Pluto, in the sign of Aquarius. It is only now when humanity is able to experience firsthand the shadow expression of mind over matter. This is where we are entering into a reality also supported strongly by Saturn conjunct Fomalhaut, that we have to be very careful of what we even think because it might manifest immediately and in a very stark, direct, I'm looking for the right word here, in a very mirrored, actually mirrored way. So we might need to actually, for real, watch out what we think. Watch our thoughts. The North Node in the sign of Gemini in 2021 and the eclipses that went with it was a big start lesson for this, how to take control of the lower mind and who and what we identify ourselves with. That was the lesson. Now with Pluto in fellow air sign Aquarius, we need to apply that lesson as if our life depends on it, because it does. Our life is getting to depend on what we allow ourselves to think and what we allow in our mental sphere, because the program is executed immediately. You know, all those subtle adverts and the things on social media and the marketing tricks of the trade, well, they're running as programs, but for real this time. So some people who are sensitive will simply delete everything that is advertising, everything that is social media, because they will immediately know that it will invade their higher mind, and that is a no-no. So this is where social media starts to fall, because the instinct of people, Pluto immediately squaring the nodes of the moon, especially the north node in Taurus, the instinct knows. It knows. Why does it know? Mercury also this week on the 3rd, so the beginning of the week, immediately enters the sign of Taurus and starts conjuncting the north node, knowledge, Mercury. Now, this energy has a lot of practically applicable expressions, which I'll get to that later on in the horoscope. Real life, business, money, finances, value, etc. But first, we need to examine the divine expression of this. So, Mercury conjunct the North Node, the instinct knows, the inner animal, even the lower ego, Taurus, knows what we need to stay away from, but in a very serious manner. And chances are a lot of things on the internet, we will block out information. May that be mainstream media, TV, everything that has, it will irritate us. It will cause us to be aggressive towards it. chances are advertising will backfire this week. And all the period while Pluto does square this north node, this is where instead of alluring some people, it will cause like a vomit, symbolically speaking, while for other people, it will trap them, it will suck them in. Like it will, this is where I don't want to use a really, really horrible term here, but the mental zombification does begin, where consumerism, becomes Aquarian, as in it takes truly its toll on those who are meant to be the consumers, and other people run away from it. The Aquarius is the dual sign who doesn't have any intermediary between the two extremes. It stays in the two extremes. The separation starts happening. Pluto. So this will echo on the world economy, collective psychology. The Great Depression is what comes to mind. We are all collectively are going to be feeling it. It is here. It's not knocking at it is already in the door, stepped in, sat down on the sofa and starts telling us all the reasons why our depression is kind of true valid, because the values out there are profoundly corrupted and deceptive, because the values that we see every single day and are in our collective consciousness, Aquarius, Pluto and Aquarius, are not true to our soul, collectively speaking, values. So you can imagine that this does produce effect. Economically, financially, change is here, basically. This is what this energy says. But in a more subtle way, well, we must not forget that Saturn is also having its say. What kind of sacrifice is acceptable and what is not anymore. And this energy, as I said, sometimes takes away the givers, the offerers of the sacrifice, leaving a void, leaving an emptiness, and ultimately causing adaptation. Again, Pisces, the power of Pisces, the power of mutation. And we must not forget that this Pluto squares its own ruling sign of Scorpio, the south node being in it. So it is highly scorpionic. This is where this week we also have a full moon in Libra. So that means courts of justice and the law, because Jupiter is opposing it, legislation, legal system. Benefits are cut off. The community state, call it whatever you want, will not sacrifice for the vulnerable anymore. This, and please don't understand it in a drastic way, but this energy would mean a calling, or how you pronounce it, the calling, where it's the weak have to sadly, you know, suffer their fate, if that even makes sense. This is where there's famine and you cannot feed the whole farm. So those who are ill, those who will not really make it, well, mercy is limited, compassion is limited. Compassion is limited to those who have a future. And this is what this energy is coming to. Now, of course, we live in the century that we do live in, and Aquarius represents the technology. There is salvation, there is hope, there is everything, resources for everyone. The calling doesn't need to take place in such a radical sense in which I use the symbolism. But in order for there to be enough for everyone, well, the law has to permit, the Jupiterian expression. So, what is the law going to be telling us? That there are going to be big cuts, or how will the law reflect the sacrifice and the sanctity of the sacrifice? So, this already calls for social uprising, protests again, another hand-in-hand expression of Pluto squaring the North Node in Taurus. And Aquarius is all about the revolution. Then, not so long ago, Venus met Uranus in the sky. Again, rebellious energy. Then Venus is meeting Algol, fixed star Algol this week. Yes, she does this every year, but in these times it's kind of heavy because Algol is, the head of finance, banking, with Venus the head, the determining of the value. So there might be a decapitation here in the sense that the ultra powerful, the rich, the trend leaders will very quickly have a downfall, a very chaotic value shakeup, which is going to be reflected quite physically, quite in a real way as well. But again, we must watch how our minds, our thoughts, our the creational power of our higher mind is actually creating reality in a very obvious way for us in every single moment. Pluto and Aquarius. The big lesson that mind over matter is real. And you can imagine that in value system, what we judge in our minds mentally, it's not really worth it. I don't like that big brand anymore. The star, the singer. I'd rather go to my local theater and listen to music there. Go to my local pub. I don't really like the big names. I rather listen to a no name. All these mental neurons firing up are actually going to make this real very, very, very quickly. So, as quickly as the Great Depression is setting in, as quickly as the solutions and the alternative, the new, the next, comes into play. Yet, where I want to go with this energy can mentally feel very, very weird, heavy, depressive. I don't know what to do with I don't even know who I am. Yes, for those individuals who lead a very modern life, who do not have a lot of nature, forest, or natural stuff, or, who didn't have a very natural upbringing, these individuals might suffer much, much more than others. Those who did have this natural are this have the tendency to escape into it, so that's also not very okay. For them it feels absolutely beautiful, safe, but productivity and, as I said, care, compassion, sharing stops. Some people go into their bubble of comfort because everything is wonderful there. Other people are cut off from, nature, and they feel trapped in their minds. So there is a dissociation and alienation going on as well. But this is just the collective energy. Now let's get to the fine nuances of this. So on the third we have Jupiter squaring Pallas Athena. This is where this energy is much more about the house, personal comfort, sense of belonging, etc., etc. How do you get there? And with Jupiter squaring Pallas Athena, nothing is all too much trouble, nothing is all that difficult, nothing is all that compromissory, if that makes sense. We really, really want to get into safety, into comfort, into the house, building house, taking a loan for the house, fighting for in courts of justice for house, for family, for rights, for belonging, to solve something finally, which might have to do with family or cancerian matters. So this energy is promoted. Also at that time, Eris, goddess of discord, is conjunct Vesta, so that's also the birth or the birthing expression of chaos. Sometimes protection, life giving, whatever opportunities are given by chaos, are given by, the most unexpected. Then there is Mercury entering into the sign of Taurus, also at the beginning of the week on the 3rd, and conjuncting the North Node and squaring Pluto. Something is very, very, sinks in deep into our mental sphere. Value wise, whatever it is that we need to do, our material situation, finances, banks, loans, our calculations for the shorter and longer term future, what it is that we are investing into, what it is that we are 1 trillion million% not investing into. Even though it was our plan for some years, we finally get the motivation not to do it, because Pluto can mean the wisdom to not do it. So we are figuring out finances, we're figuring out business, we're figuring out also important dates and times which are gonna be fixed. Taurus is fixed. But with the Pluto square, because the Pluto square will only last a few days, because then Mercury moves out of the square. But while conjunct also the North Node, this is where the last minute adjustments. And these are not out of confusion, we have a lot of clarity because Mercury knows its stuff. Because Pluto makes it very, very obvious to it. It's hard, it's not easy, it needs time, energy, money, where to get the money from. Saturn in the sign of Pisces, time, mostly. So it's not an easy energy, but the information passed down onto us, that is concrete, that is real. We have the facts, numbers that we can work with. But of course, there is not just hardship in the sky, there is Venus sextile Neptune. Our dreams, our compassion, our maturity, our understanding, and both of these energies can be the past. The values that have been passed down to us by our parents, by our grandparents, by our culture, by our ancestral heritage. The ancestors are very, very much with us with Saturn conjunct Fomalhaut. So all of these can make a huge difference because they attract value into our lives. And speaking about attraction, this energy is heavily alchemical. So this is where magic, spirituality, prayer, everything that you do with your inner strength, but to influence reality itself. Because Saturn conjunct Fomalhaut is also the star of the occult. Also, it also has darker sides, if you know what I mean. And the darker side is when your will be done, not the divine will. That's the dark side of magic. When you know better than the divine, it always, always, 100% always is the bad choice. It will always have a bad ending. But sometimes even that is within the divine will, if you know what I mean. So anyway, everything has its usefulness. But this is where magic is at its strongest. And pre-eclipse. It's pre-eclipse, so if someone wants to do something with magic, manifest, this is definitely the period. But wisdom must be your greatest tool. Not the wand, not the dagger, not even necessarily the cup, not even the pentacle, but the spirit, the wisdom of the spirit, the ether, the invisible, the breath itself, the wisdom of that. We also have Mercury sextile Saturn. Work pays off and sacrifice pays off. Or something that you sacrificed for years by Saturn and Pisces now comes as whatever it is that you need in your life. The reward is here. The timing is here. But as I said, sextile, you need to be aware of this. You need to be using this. You need to embrace this. We also have later on in the week Mercury sextile Mars. Again, the time is here. And this is really, really good energy for family. You want to take Mars in Cancer, you want to take care of your family, children, wife, husband, this person, that person, doggy, parents, charitable cause, whatever, any type of motivation, Martian expression like this, well, sextile Saturn, it does stuff. It manifests, it works. Then, of course, we have the full moon in Libra, And I'm not going to be speaking about this full moon in quite great detail because I have a specially dedicated video, long video for this, so I'm just going to link it there. This will reflect on the world stage without a shadow of a doubt. And it's about justice, it's about a decision, it's about a choice, it's about Libra stuff. Even on the world stage, it can mean peace, it can be a situation solves itself, but it's not what meets the eye. It might be forced peace, but it can also be the opposite of peace, because also Jupiter conjuncts Chiron. So the sun, Jupiter conjuncted Chiron, and now it's the sun's turn to conjunct Chiron, the light of our consciousness, but also combustion. So the wound is seen, the wound is felt, the triggering of the wound is very, very visible. What does that do? Because that is what the full moon is going to reflect and give an answer to. What does the wound do? But in the horoscope, I would like to put the emphasis on what happens shortly after this full moon. Because the full moon takes place at 16 degrees of Libra, and then the moon moves away from that degree onto 24, 22, 24, 25 degrees of Libra, when Neptune and Venus are going to be pointing at the moon, a yacht formation, two quincunxes. So whatever, for example, Libra, court ruling, full moon, whatever the court ruling is, the reaction to it. And that's a fated reaction because the finger of God points at it. What happens? And this is around 5th, 6th April. What happens at that time? It is very, very symbolic, suggesting, and the moon, if you look at it collectively, the collective emotion, the collective feeling, say collective sense of justice is stirred heavily because, the finger of God. But personally speaking, something also fated might take place in our lives, a connection, a partnership, another person, something in the court of justice, something formal, legal, etc. Um, there is Mercury sextiling Mars as well. That's also an energy. Our words, our communication, our investment, our terms, dates, terms, etc., even terms and conditions are accepted. Something happens. It's action oriented. Communication is blessed. And also Venus conjunct Algol. Now, as I said, this happens every single year, but this year it might be symbolic because the World Bank, we might be seeing the head of something, what happens to its value. In which way is it transforming? In which way is it changing? And this energy is really, really, and the all of these sextiles in the sky, but Pluto squaring the north node, this is very chaotic for business because the disruptions, the dangers, protests, strikes, work is halted because Saturn in the sign of Pisces loves doing that. I'm not working anymore, especially core services. It disrupts the service. It makes the sacrifice not be able to be there. Saturn in Pisces, sometimes you want to help, you have everything covered because you thought about it, you have it covered, and there it is, sacrifice prevents you from helping. Fate, limitations, you break down and you just cannot help. You had everything covered, you had the wisdom, you had the work, you had the diligence, and yet you cannot help. Whatever is has to happen on its own because you cannot intervene. Sometimes it's this energy, and we might be seeing this in the world stage out there. Someone, something simply cannot intervene, it cannot help, it has to play out. So it is this part of the collective energy and expression as well, but it is also in our in our individual lives. As I said, this Pluto in Aquarius is very, very heavy on our mental spheres. We might be feeling as if no one can understand us, no one can help us. We feel a little bit lost, especially in modern life, because Aquarius is modern life. heavy digitalization, even in our interhuman connections. If it's digital, if it's virtual, if it's just Aquarius friends, if it's just a friend, it's an alien to me. This is where we start feeling alien from everyone who doesn't have the human touch. And the soul cannot be tricked. The North Node in Taurus cannot be tricked because it knows what's real. This is where Saturn sometimes in the sign of Pisces, it causes the soul to starve. And only love, only true affection, only real um, intention, real and not saying, oh, I wish you the best. That's fake. That's saying something without meaning, without intent. This is where Pluto squaring the North Node in Taurus. If the soul intent isn't there, words are empty. Every music is empty. Everything feels empty. You need the authenticity. Again, Uranus in the sign of Taurus. If it's not authentic, it doesn't manifest. It's not allowed to help. So this is where people who are very, very modern will feel a sense of starving for real. But what is real? The affection, the feeling, the lived experience. It has to be real. And they don't know what real is, but the soul knows. So they try to translate what their soul feels. What is this void? Why is this routine pattern which used to help me every single time for many years? It doesn't make me feel better anymore. The serotonin isn't there. I don't feel the same way I used to. For example, internet chat, chat lines, social media, dating apps, they just don't provide the satisfaction. The movie, the fantasy, the series, the online game, everything Aquarian, the virtual friends, the going out with a person you didn't share hardship with. It's not real. Those will be, you know, cast away by from your soul. Like, I don't have friends, but I have so very many people, and this is where the soul knows a person who you haven't shared something intimate with on the soul level. So that means not really physically, but a hardship, a deep emotion, a deep truth, something. There is no soul level bond there. There is nothing there, just a mental one. So Pluto is the truth, the hard truth, and it tells you that you need soul connection. The soul needs to be fed as well. So you either put soul into the internet, and you can do that very quickly and easily by, you know, not focusing on anything which doesn't have soul. So you will choose the soul music, the soul channels, whatever it is that you do on the internet, you will choose that which appeals to your soul and not really to your mind. But everything else that used to appeal to everything else is fading away from your sphere. So this is how the transformation, the transition takes place. But this is painful. This feels lonely. This feels sad. This feels like your mind is in a midst of, like a neural fire, like a neural inferno. It processes everything, but it still feels that something's missing, something's not real, something's not truly authentic. It longs for the realness of the feeling. And the realness can be found, as I said, within yourself or within the divine. Of course, the quantum nature of the divine, but that is also divine. So there is solution, there is magic, there is Saturn in the sign of Pisces, the good side of it, out there for everyone. So this is one of those weeks, regardless of how hard it is, regardless of how this Pluto in Aquarius tortures our mental sphere a little bit. Let us embrace magic. Let us embrace mystery. Let us embrace prayer. Let us embrace the mystery, the sacredness of our own soul. It will get us there. That Saturn conjunct Fomalhaut will start working. When there is nothing technological out there to help us. The divine is almost smiling, waiting for us to embrace it because the help is definitely out there. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for all the love, all the support. If you'd like to support me and my work and my channel, if you'd like me to be able to continue this, you can donate on the PayPal link in the description below. And with this being said, I wish everyone a lot of strength, and let us remember that Saturn in Pisces works very, very well with deep appreciation and gratitude. So I am deeply appreciative and grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. And until next time, bye for now.